Okay, so welcome everyone to this peer support group session. It's nice to see you all and we look forward to lots of discussion and sharing of learning throughout this and our future peer group sessions. If you haven't already done so, please add your name and service name to the chat, or if you're local authority support staff, please detail that. This just helps us for our attendance records. As we've just covered there, today's session is being recorded for those who are unable to attend, and this will be stored on our hub for access after the session. We won't be recording breakout rooms or feedback discussion, only presenter slide input. So we have set up the peer support sessions and invited attendees from all completed cohorts. So welcome to those who have recently completed our programme. Participants have told us that the opportunity to connect with colleagues across the country was an important aspect of our programme, so we are keen to take this forward. Peer group sessions will, as far as possible, be held quarterly and feature a short informative input with plenty of opportunities to discuss in breakout rooms the information shared and your thoughts and opinions on the topic. And these sessions are designed to support you and your team on your improvement journey. Today's session is the first of two sessions about meaningful child participation and will give you the opportunity to reflect on your current approach to child participation in the context of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, UNCRC, as well as some participation models to consider. I'm sure we as a team need no further introductions. However, today we are pleased to be joined by Karina Girvin and Tracy Doherty. Karina and Tracy, do you want to say a quick hi?
Hi everybody,
Hello.
Morning, lovely to see so many people on here. Hope your morning started well so far.
Thanks, Karina. Tracy, are you there to say
Hi
hi?
everyone. Yep, nice to see you all. It's good to see such a good turnout.
So Karina and Tracy are our colleagues from Scrutiny, who some of you may already know, and they both have an interest and lead role with regards to UNCRC and are passionate about supporting meaningful child participation at all levels. So let's start off the session with a Sonia Sparkle's image, which highlights the need for an empathy lens. She says, "To understand my perspective, ask me, and to live my experience, listen to me." Remember Stephen Covey's reference to communication issues and how we often don't listen to understand, but rather we listen to reply. Maybe that sounds familiar. We are often so busy we are rushing ahead in a conversation and thinking of our response to get it where we want to go, rather than actually listening and understanding the other person's opinion and perspective. This is a good reminder to stop and think of your own practice. Do you connect to the child's feelings, or do you relate them to your own feelings? Do you make assumptions about the child's lens and their experience, or do you help their lens evolve and truly listen and understand their experience? And think, are you listening to truly understand, or just awaiting your turn to respond? Today we are going to explore children's rights and their right to have their voice heard meaningfully and effectively. So you remember last session we introduced you to Arnstein's A Ladder of Citizen Participation, which demonstrated the different stages of engagement and participation with users, from non-participation through to tokenism and all the way to genuine citizen power and co-production. At the top of this ladder is citizen control and delegated power, which in your settings would be child-led, where children have the idea and set up the project. I'm now going to hand over to Karina to explore the UNCRC. Thanks, Karina.
Thanks, Hilary. So the UNCRC was drafted in 1989 and it was ratified in 1991 and it came into force in the UK in 1992. It is the most widely signed treaty in history, with only one country not signing that, which is America. So the convention has 54 articles, and the 54 articles outline the rights that all children are entitled to. But it also explains how adults and governments must work together to ensure that children can enjoy all of their rights. And if you go onto UNICEF website, you'll find the convention there, but you'll also find it in child-friendly language, which you can use with your children. However, there's also a book by the Children and Young People's Commissioner that you can use with your children. It's a storybook, and it can help children to develop an understanding of what their rights are. It's a really lovely book. So I think there's a wee link perhaps at the back. If not, I'm sure Hilary can send that out to yourselves. That's a really nice resource that you can use within your setting, and it can also help staff as well understand children's rights. So all 54 articles are equally important, and they play a part in supporting and upholding children's rights. However, the fact that we have ratified the UNCRC doesn't guarantee that the rights will be respected or protected or upheld. It can only happen when it's incorporated into domestic law. So you may have heard about the incorporation bill that came into force, or became an act in January. That's what Scotland's done. They have put children's rights within legislation. So it's now a hufty. We have to uphold children's rights. We have no choice. It's not luck. It's not if we wish children to give them their rights, we have to facilitate them. Next slide, please, for Tracy.
Thank you. So as you can see, this one here is Article 12. So when we're thinking about children's participation, the voice of the child in your setting, Article 12 is the main article that covers that. So as you can see, it says there, the party shall assure to the child who is capable of forming his or her own views the right to express those views freely in all matters affecting the child, the views of the child being given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. In child-friendly language, and as Karina said, like there's loads of posters, there's loads of different items out there that you can see that's all translated into child-friendly language. But basically, the gist of it is children have a right to give their opinion, and for adults to listen and to take it seriously. So when we're looking at it from that point of view, that's where you can start to look at the link between tokenistic gestures in nurseries and settings and actual meaningful participation. How well are we listening to the children, and in terms of opinions, taking their views seriously? What are we doing about it? Is it a tick box exercise, or is it something that's actually, you know, we're embedding into our practice? And that's kind of what we're looking at. And Hilary, I think, has a little poll for you now.
Perfect, thanks, Tracy. So yeah, just thinking about the points there, we're going to do a quick poll to see how you think currently Article 12 is reflected in your daily practice. Okay, so thinking about that bit about really valuing the child's voice and the way in which you gather that. The poll, which Leslie will just
should just be up in a wee second. It's just taking a wee bit of time today, but it should just appear in the middle of your screen in just a wee second for everybody to answer. So if you just bear with me a wee second.
Thanks, Leslie.
No problem.
But the poll is going to ask you, do you think that it is Article 12 is fully embedded in your daily practice, somewhat embedded in your daily practice, or not at all in your daily practice? Okay, so that's what the poll is going to be asking you when it appears.
Okay, that should be it now. It's on from it's on the middle of my screen, so that should be yours.
That's it there now. Thank you, Leslie. So everybody can see the options there. If anyone is having difficulty accessing the poll, you can put your response into the chat. Okay, so the poll's jumped on to a different one. If you scroll in your chat back up, you will get the one how it is Article 12 is reflected in your daily practice. Fully, somewhat, or not at all.
Yeah, just ignore the how are you feeling today. It's not that we're not interested in how you're feeling. It just randomly appears when you do a poll now for some reason. It just likes to ask, Teams likes to ask that question.
It's nice to see a lot of you are feeling good and some of you are feeling great.
And just a wee reminder, the poll is anonymous, just if anybody's a bit concerned about sharing that information, the poll is anonymous.
Yeah, there's a good chance, yeah, it's an honest reflection. Thanks, Vicky. Okay, we're still waiting on a few people, quite a few people responding, so we'll give it another wee minute.
And we've got a few in the chat there, Hilary, as well. We've got a couple of somewhats, a fully, somewhat. Yep, somewhat.
Okay. Yep, great. So that's a few people feeling that it is fully embedded, majority feeling it's somewhat embedded, and no one feeling they're not doing it at all at the minute. Okay, I think the poll stays there if people are still feeling that they need to. Oh, thanks, Stacey. That's fine that you've popped that in there into the chat. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Karina now to continue a bit more looking more closely at what this means. Thanks, Karina.
Thanks, Hilary. So we know Tracy's just shared what Article 12 of the Convention says, and it's about listening to children and having their voice really, really heard. However, if you look at General Comment 7, you'll be able to find this if you do a Google search. General Comment 7 is done by the committee of the Convention, and this gives a breakdown of what Article 12 means. So it's, I can't remember how many pages, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 pages, but it gives you a breakdown of what that really, really means. So when we're thinking about all children's rights, but for this case, if we're looking at Article 12, we're listening to all our children. Our children's rights are not age divided, and they shouldn't be age divided. All our children should be heard and should be listened to. And there's different ways that children and everybody can communicate. It's not always about those verbal communication. You know, you're thinking about your babies. You know, how do they communicate? How are they sharing their voice? How are they making their presence known within your baby room or your 2 to 3 room? And think about your children who are non-verbal or have got additional support needs. How are they making sure that their voice is heard? And how are you making sure that you're listening to every single one of your children? So what the committee say is, the committee wishes to emphasise that Article 12 applies to both the younger and the older children. As holders of rights, even the youngest children are entitled to express their views, which should be given due weight in accordance with the age and maturity of the child. So young children, they're acutely aware or acutely sensitive to their surroundings and very rapidly acquire understanding of the people, places, routines of their lives, along with their awareness of their own unique identity. They make choices and communicate their feelings, ideas and wishes in numerous ways, long before they're able to verbally communicate through conversations of spoken or written language. So think about babbling, body movements, eye movements, gestures, pointing. Think about all that in non-verbal communication that babies are trying to tell you. But also, if anyone is aware of Frobo or has a study, what Frobo says is that if we were to dismiss babies' communication, then we're devaluing their identity, but also their place and presence within society and within our early years settings. So just give a wee bit of consideration. But also about adult responsibility. It's our adults, as adults, it's our responsibility to ensure that we are listening to our children. Truly listening, just come back to what Tracy was saying about that link between tokenism and authenticity. We need to be listening to our children. But if you think one of the articles, Article 42, talks about the responsibility of governments to ensure that adults and children know about their rights, but adults have a responsibility to ensure that children know about their rights and that we are facilitating them. As I said earlier, it's not about we give them or we allow them. We have to facilitate those rights. So it's about adults making sure they are fully aware. So think about your staff, think about yourself. Is there any training? Is there anything that needs to be done? When you're doing some reflections, how are you facilitating that within your setting? And is it authentic? So it's just about always going back and thinking about what does this mean for our children and what's the purpose of doing this? Next slide, please, for Tracy.
Thank you, Leslie. So this one here, this is a quote from Cornwall, which is making the good point of, you know, as the process and actually having a voice, being involved and actually being listened to as that happening. So as you can see, the quote says, being involved in a process is not equivalent to having a voice. Voices need to be nurtured. People need to feel able to express themselves without fear or reprisals or the expectations of not being listened to or taken seriously. And this applies strongly to our children. If children are constantly giving you information and don't feel that they're being listened to, then they're not going to keep going. You know, they'll pick up on those cues themselves. And as Karina said, it's not just the, you know, your verbal children that you're looking for. It's that kind of, like, you know, listening with your eyes and your ears and being able to see as well as hear their voices, you know, and pick up on their cues, but actually paying attention. And again, so it's kind of looking back at the practice and thinking, are you involving children? Or is it just a tick box exercise? Or are you actually nurturing their voices effectively and meaningfully? Or are you paying attention? And most importantly, and I think this is something where a lot of people kind of forget, are you feeding back to them? So when they're giving their opinions and giving their views and you're gathering it all, which is great, but are you feeding it back? Or have we got, like you said, we did board or a results board, for example? It's really important that children and parents and anybody else that you're taking it for, but for today, we're obviously looking at Article 12 and children's involvement. So it's really important that they know that when they're given across their voices and they're given their opinions, that as a result of that, they can see what's being done. Even if it's a case of, you know, sometimes, you know, they'll ask for things. I mean, one example I've got is, you know, we'd asked a child what would make a service better, and he said to take all the books out the book corner. You know, some things you can't do because that wouldn't be a book corner anymore. Somebody else asked for Spider-Man in the service. Again, I'd love to bring Tom Holland along. Couldn't do it, beyond my reaches. But if you can't, you know, you explain to them why, and giving them that explanation and having that acknowledgement makes them want to give you the information again, and it means that you're getting that cycle of continuous involvement from them. And also it gives you the opportunity to really celebrate the successes and see them celebrating any successes and achievements, because that's really important for them as well, to know that you know, they're part of that. And I think if you move on to the next slide now, Karina and I are going to start giving some examples that we've got of practice.
Thanks, Tracy. So I've got a couple, just two practice examples, just of where there's been really good intentions, but the outcomes maybe not been achieved as people had hoped. So the first example that I've got when I was out and about is, you know, there was a lovely wall display that was created. There were some nice photos on this wall display. There was some written comments from that children had said, and they were put on the wall. And I don't know the exact name for them, but there was these red buttons. And what you can do with these red buttons is when you press it, you can hear back what someone has said. So it's a recording device. And these were stuck on the wall as well. So the service had worked to collect children's voice, their views, their ideas, and they had put this lovely wall display up. Now, the difficulty was the wall display was far too high for children. So children walked past it and actually didn't see it, but they couldn't engage with the wall. So, you know, through discussions with the service, we were saying, but who's the wall for? Why have you put this up? What's the purpose of it? And if we go back to what Tracy was saying about that link between tokenism and authenticity, they've gathered children's voice, it's there, but why? What was the purpose of doing that? Children can't engage with it. They can't reach the button to hear themselves. They can't reach it for them to hear their peers or to reflect on any learning or to reflect on what they had said and if that had changed. The pictures were too small for children to see. They can't read the written word at this age. So when we're thinking about that, is it tokenistic or is it authentic? In this case, it was tokenistic. And actually what transpired through discussions was the wall display was for adults. It wasn't for the children. So then we had to ask, well, what was the point in doing it for the children? Then there was no feedback to children. There was no next steps for that. There was nothing taken forward. It was just a really nice display that was far too high for children to see, to engage. So it's giving consideration to if you are collecting children's voice, how are you doing it? Where is it being stored? Who's it for? And can children go back and revisit this? Can they go and press that button? Can they go and look at those photos and say, oh, that was me doing da 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 da, or I remember I said, you know, X, Y, and Z. So it's about giving a wee bit of consideration to how that's managed. Another one that I saw was a lovely wall. Again, it was a wall display. And I know that everybody or every setting can have a different terminology, but it was a a champion role for staff, to be the children's rights coordinator. And they took it really seriously. You know, they were doing training, they were reading documents, and again, they had made a lovely wall display, had their photo on it. They linked to GIRFEC and they were using Shinari. They'd written articles up again. They had pictures. But again, it was too high for children. There was too much jargon for parents. Parents walked past it because it was too overwhelming for them. There was too much information. It wasn't child friendly. The children didn't know about the rights, so they didn't actually know what that was that was up there. Parents weren't 100% sure on what it was. So again, it's who's this for? Why are you doing it? Can you make this better? So again, when people have got champion roles, what does it look like in practice? Because it's not always about a really high wall display. So something else that I was thinking about with general comment 7 and the adult's responsibility is participation requires adults to adopt a child-centred attitude to listening to children and respecting their dignity and individual points of views, but it also requires you to think creatively about how do you collect those views, how are you putting it into practice, and how are you ensuring that your children know what you're doing. So it's think about all those different things. When you're going to do something, why am I doing this? Who's it for? And why? Why am I doing it? So give a wee bit of consideration to them. Next slide, please, for Tracy. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so the first thing I was going to look at was some examples I've seen when I've been out of personal plans that have, you know, worked quite effectively. Nowadays, I think there's a push from a lot of places, and I understand I'm a bit of a technophobe, so I'll put that out there firsthand. Though, as I said earlier, it's not me. I quite like technology, it just doesn't like me. But I think a lot of people are now moving on. So when you're using personal plans or care plans, we're moving into the online kind of system, which works really, really well in some places. But we're often finding that the children's voice is being lost because people are struggling of how to capture the children's voices. And I have seen it being used really effectively, actually, in one place where they had the online app and everything, the personal plans, the children's wellbeing assessment plans, all strategies were all kept on, you know, online, but children had full access as well. So children were able to update it on a daily, multiple times a day. Actually, children were walking about with their iPads. They were given access into their own, they could take their own photos. They could take photos and videos of each other. They were sending that to their parents, you know, after they were doing it, and, you know, telling mum, voice recording, here's what I've done today. They were sharing it. They had like a sister kind of nursery. They were doing like video postcards and passing on that information. They were also still using floor books. They hadn't went completely fully away from it. And what they were doing was, if they were taking photos and putting things up on the walls, the children could just go up and take the pictures off the wall and ask a member of staff, and they would bring over the floor book. The children would sit and put the photos in, sitting in the room with the staff, and it gave them that opportunity for the children to reflect and evaluate on the activities and their experiences, what they'd learned, what it had been like. And it was being fully used as a living document, you know, at all aspects. You know, when information was coming in, children were telling them things, parents were telling them things, it was being updated regularly. And I think I've also seen examples of people who have got ones who have separate little booklets that the children can take home and do information with the parents at home, so they can update, you know. And again, it's that way of celebrating successes, any achievements, and you know, they keep it in nursery, but they can take it home with them in the evenings or for weekends for the parents to help them fill them in and share what they like. And you know, there was some really nice, in fact, one of the ones I'd seen, the wee one had taken it home, and his mum had sellotaped a bauble kind of thing just to a hair clip, because she said at home he was looking for circles and that had been his favourite circle, so she'd sellotaped it into the book. So it was an example, and then that get carried on when the wee one came back into nursery. And again, I think it is what Karina said, it's that we're always thinking about the sort of so what question. Why are you doing things? So you've done all this, so what? Who's it helping? Who's it benefiting? How's that making the outcomes better for children? And that's what we kind of always have to have in the back of our mind. Another example I've got revolves recruitment. And the reason there's a photo of Mary Poppins there is, I did not come up with this, the service themselves told me this is what they did when they were recruiting. The main part of it was they told the children the staff member was leaving. If they had a staff member leaving and they were recruiting, they would let them know, they gave the children that time for the transition to understand and know they were losing that member of staff and they would have to be prepared for someone else coming in. And to help with that, they gave the children their Mary Poppins wish list of things they would like the new member of staff to have, what sort of, you know, activities she'd like to do or what kind of personality. And they found it not only a really good way of including the children in the recruitment process, but also of understanding from a child's point of view of what they were maybe lacking from staff, what skills were missing, what experiences, you know, the children felt that they could do with, or what they really loved about that member of staff and they were scared of losing. Obviously, again, you know, they had to explain to children, you know, magic tricks and things. They couldn't necessarily hire a member of staff who was brilliant at everything, but they could take it on board. And, you know, when the staff members were coming in to recruit, they were spending time in the room with the children as well as part of the recruitment process, so that the children were getting the opportunity to chat with them. A child was helping when they were doing their interviews in the setting. The child was welcoming people at the door and helping them come in, showing them where to go and being part of the full process so that they were fully involved. And again, you know, they were feeding back to the children about who was getting hired, what, you know, without breaking any confidentiality and things, but explaining to the children the reasons and giving them all time to kind of just adjust and accept and meaningfully including the children instead of just saying, oh, by the way, a new member of staff starting next week, which, as we all know, can be, you know, all those transitions and all that change can be quite, you know, off-putting for children. So it was just a really nice way of involving children in that recruitment process as well. So it's just something to think about.
Okay, so a useful model to consider when thinking about evaluating your input with Child's Voice is Shear's model of participation. This highlights 5 levels of participation along with 3 stages of commitment at each level. The ultimate goal within this model is level 5, which represents genuine co-production and sees children share power and responsibility for decision making. The model highlights that level 3 is the minimum approach required to align with UNCRC Article 12. This model provides a further level of reflection and evaluation for you and your staff teams as to their current stage and approach to children's participation. If we closely look at level 3, which is, as we've highlighted, is the minimum to endorse the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, level 3 is children's views are taken into account. It asks, are you ready to take children's views into account? Does your decision-making process enable you to take children's views into account? Is it a policy requirement that children's views must be given due weight in decision-making? The second point about does your decision-making process enable you to take children's views into account? Have a think about what kind of decision-making the children have. So what you've just been discussing in your breakout rooms as well. What level, for example? Is it choosing where they sit for lunch or what book to read? Or is it more meaningful where the children lead on all aspects of their day with staff facilitating this and not deciding it for them? How many processes across your setting in a day are children meaningfully involved in with regard to decision making? If there are only a few processes, then ask yourself, does this really meet level 3 and Article 12? Or are your team making decisions and plans for the children, involving them at some points, but however not fully nurturing their voice? And think back to the first ladder, which showed child-led as being children deciding on and setting up the project. Think about the example that Tracy shared earlier about the recruitment process in that particular setting. So we're aware we've given you lots to consider today and a few participation models to use for some further self-evaluation for your own settings. And we will be sharing links to all the information that we shared today, including links to the participation models. So as we explained at the start of the session, this session today was the first part in a series of 2 exploring the meaningful impact of the child's voice. So what we'd like you to do from today is go away and carry out some of your own self-evaluation on how meaningful child participation is within your own setting. We'd like you to think about How well are you endorsing and embedding the UNCRC within your setting? Are you empowering and enabling children to be responsible for decision making and setting up projects? Or are you paying lip service to their views and their opinion? And again, think back to Karina and Tracy's input earlier about that legislative impact and the role of you as the adult to ensure you are meaningfully including the child's voice. In carrying out this self-evaluation, this will help you identify where are you now, which you'll all remember we spoke about through the programme. And as this in turn helps you set an aim for where you want to be. And this will ultimately improve the value of the child's voice within your setting. So we'd like to redo the poll now again from earlier, following the input of this session. As Vicky highlighted earlier, it is anonymous, and would like you to reflect again, having listened to the input and had your discussions, how well do you feel you're reflecting Article 12 into your daily practice? And I'll hand over to Leslie for the poll. Thanks, Leslie.
Thanks, Hilary. Okay, so that should hopefully be on your screen now.
Thank you.
Either
So
in the
this-
middle of your screen or just check into your chat. And again, like before, if anybody's having trouble on the poll, please feel free just to put your response into the chat.
Okay, so we have 100% for somewhat so far. We have another somewhat in the chat, another somewhat. Yep. Okay, we'll give you all a little longer to respond. There's a few more of you to put your responses in yet. Still looking at the overall somewhat. Yep.
And there's
We
another
have
4 responses in the chat as well for somewhat.
We've
Okay.
got, so that's 11 in total, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, so if we have a think about what we got earlier, Leslie, in terms of that poll.
Yeah, we were
Is there a
earlier, we were
difference?
sitting around 95 for somewhat and 5 for fully. I know people put some in the chat, but there was some fully, and at the moment, as far as I could see, we're 100% for somewhat and no
Somewhat.
for fully.
Okay. Okay, so that's a wee bit of a difference, and hopefully that it shows as well the reflection that you've been able to have on some of the input today, and go away and do that real honest evaluation about how well you're capturing the child's voice, and in true improvement style, how can you improve that? How can you use what you know in terms of your improvement methodology, your PDSA cycles, to test out some changes to improve that for children? Thanks, Leslie. So another resource for you to consider and explore is the 7 Golden Rules for Participation. These are a set of principles that anyone working with children and young people can use. They inform adults what children and young people's participation should feel like. They are: understand my rights, a chance to be involved. Remember, it's my choice. Value me, support me, work together, and keep in touch. Okay, so again, we will share, we're going to go on and to the next slide, please, Leslie, and you'll see we have a whole bunch of links of the resources that we've spoken about today to share with you. We will send out the links to these resources. I think we'll get Leslie to pop all that into an email for you all, so that you can go away and explore any of these areas further. Okay. And as I say, what our ask of you today is to go away, explore that and evaluate where you're at. And then we will come back together for a further session where we will look more closely at the younger child and infant voice. And that we'll send a date out for that, but it is hopeful to be around mid-June before you people start taking breaks for summer holidays. But hopefully you found today useful. If you have, remember, please share your thoughts in a post on X, formerly known as Twitter, using our hashtag ALCimprove. And it's been lovely to see you all again today, and we hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
And a particular thank you to Karina and Tracy for joining us today and having the input to the session. And we're hopeful they will be able to be part of the follow-up session as well. So thank you, Karina and Tracy.
No, thank you for having us.
Thank you. There was a question from Amanda. I think I saw it come in. Will we be automatically invited to all future sessions, or do we need to look out for them somewhere? No, you will get a Teams invite from myself for any future peer group sessions. So it'll just come into you via email.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, folks.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks,
Bye.
Terry.
See you
Bye.
soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.